Welcome to the Awaken Heart podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Get ready to create magic and miracles as you lean into your heart's desires. I believe not only does the heart want what it wants, but it knows. This show is a weekly deep dive into what it means to live from an awakened heart. I'll be sharing inspiring stories and real conversations with people just like you, who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. My mission is to show you how you too can be connected and heart-centered in every area of your life. Your journey to aligning with more love, more joy, and your wildest dreams come true starts now. Welcome back to the Awaken Heart podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters, and today's guest I'm super excited to have on today is Sheri Savage, and she is the author of a series of books called Lydia's League of Angels. What I love is it's bringing the real life problem and the epidemic of human trafficking, sexual slavery, and crimes against women and children, and spins it into a series of books and adventures where we have heroines, we have angels, and we have demons. And we're all fighting to address these issues. And it's weaving in real life heroines that have fought against these crimes throughout the years. So we start in 1960 and we go into the 2060s and we see how the problem has evolved over the years. And each of the heroines, who are descendants of the Lydia of Thyatira, have specific roles to play in each decade. While we see God and angels and celestial beings and demons playing an important role, it is not just faith-based, but is made for the masses, for everyone to watch and have an audience for. So it's not just about religion. It weaves together all these different issues that are going on in the world and how we can help prevent them and not just bring awareness to it, but eradicate it from the face of the earth. 5 years ago, Sheri Savage immersed her passion for writing with her desire to improve the status of women and children after a 25-year career advocating to improve injustices regarding domestic violence, poverty, and sexual abuse. She is a strong believer that entertainment can raise spiritual and social consciousness, create awareness, and advocate change for the better. The Lydia's League of Angels series is compiled of her personal life experiences, historical events, along with her visions, hopes, and dreams regarding the status of women and children. After realizing the suffering is greater now than when her career began, she had a revelation, entertaining the masses by merging reality and fantasy and creating a what-if scenario that would raise awareness and facilitate change for the better. Then Lydia's League of Angels was born. The angels lead us to ask the question, will it take a supernatural occurrence of divine intervention to save the female gender? The demons make us ask ourselves, could evil forces be at the root of horrific crimes? Sheri is in talks with a production company about bringing it to the big screen or turning it into a television series. Her goal, her dream, is to move beyond raising awareness about sex crimes, but addressing how to stomp it out, trafficking, pedophilia, pornography, and the deep, dark web. Also to educate so individuals will demand change regarding prevention, protection, and prosecution. At the end of each episode, a link or infomercial is shared by a nonprofit fighting these crimes. So not only do we have this epic series with these amazing heroines woven into fantasy addressing real life issues, but it's also going to create change and bring awareness and contribute to these other organizations that are fighting these crimes daily. So we can create real change in our world. So without further ado, here is today's guest, Sheri Savage, who shares with us the adventures of 4 female descendants of an ancient heroine as they inherit a league of angels and a godly mission. Hey, Sheri, welcome to the Awaken Heart podcast.
Hello, glad to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. And you're coming from Kentucky, right?
Lexington, Kentucky, correct. We have snow right now.
You have snow in Kentucky.
Yeah, snow for Christmas.
We're under some kind of gray skies and it's a little colder and windy here in Portland, Oregon. We've had a couple really sunny days, except yesterday I went for a walk and I was like, woo, it's a little chillier than I thought because of the wind. I forgot about wind chill factor.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So you have these amazing books, as I had mentioned in the intro, and I think it's such a brilliant idea that weaves in some of the problems that are happening here as a society in the world. A lot of it that's not really addressed enough. And it's a really huge pandemic that is happening with, sexual trafficking and human slavery. And you weave it into these books to without getting very graphic, to bring awareness to what's happening. You weave it in with God and angels and demons. So where did you come from? Like, what is your background? And then what inspired you to create this series?
Right. I have been in my career social justice advocate and community developer, fighting for the rights of women and children, especially your at-risk populations, for 25 years. And it dawned on me, it's worse now than it's ever been. I know it's been around for thousands of years, but it's worse. So I just had a revelation. If the sex crimes are going to cease against women and children, it is going to take an intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like maybe it's time to get the point across that we're not doing a good enough job. And should we have to depend on angels to fight the demons and the evil that are having these horrific crimes around women and children? So I just left my career and said, I have to do this. And I just started writing. I just started writing nonstop, and I kept the headline information and research of what was happening through the time from 1960 to futuristic 2060, because basically there's 4 heroines that inherit a League of Angels, and they have 100 years to be successful in fighting specific crimes, or the female gender is up for extinction. So I'm going to make the point that we need to be valued.
Mm-hmm. And we've talked so much about the rising of the feminine, how we've been under a patriarchy for so long, and the women are now being recognized again for their values and for their intelligence, for their intuition. I mean, way back in the day, way before we got turned into whores and by the Bible or Christianity, how we're like, we are always healers, and then there were the witch trials, but we were revered as goddesses, and we ruled a lot of societies. We were always the wise women. We were really elevated, and somehow through 2,000 years, we've gotten squashed and set aside. And now there is the rising of the feminine. And what I've seen is a lot of men are needing to, kind of figure out how to hold the space to embrace this rising of feminine instead of fighting against it, because become part of it, because there's masculine and feminine in each other, and the planet is overheating because there's way too much testosterone out there. And it's also about embracing the feminine within the masculine. So with that said, there are all these horrible crimes happening, and a lot of them are perpetuated against women and children. And some of it has become highlighted, but then the media is really quiet about it. So, and I really feel like you're saying, like, your books will, starting at the ages of 13 to adults, that it's really important to educate these children in such a way, and tying in, angels, angelic, celestial beings, which takes you kind of outside of yourself into a higher power, and believing in something else in order to make these changes. So, I mean, there's great organizations like thorn.org, there's Operation Underground. So you take a lot of what you've researched and you weave them into your story. So what is that process like?
I'm a researcher. When you run nonprofits and work for education and government entities, you don't have a lot of money. So you have to research, get the facts, and go after the funds. And I thrive on that. And also because I know that if we do not look at the past, we cannot correct the future. And that was missing. That's missing in everything we advocate for women, children, men, boys, whomever. So what I did, I began in the 1960s because to me, when you research, that is really maybe where we started a downward spiral. There was the Vietnam War. We had the cell phones, and we started using a lot more technology. I'm all for advancement, but we don't want technology to be ahead of us as humans and have to absorb it, control it, maintain it in terms of for our betterment. So I looked at the 1960s and our first heroine, Lou, she becomes 18 in 1970. And of course, that is when feminism, women's liberation, came onto the scene, which was great recognition for, hey, here we are, we want equality, let's move forward. How do we do that? You had the Vietnam War going on, which that affected trafficking, sex trafficking. It had been around for thousands of years, but wars facilitate sex trafficking, sex crimes. And not to say being liberated is bad, because it's not. My second book, the subtitle is Lou's Liberation. But again, it's a point of understanding and equal education for men, not to think we're trying to rise above or condemn man, because I don't believe that's what it's about. It's just about what's in your DNA, what's your environment, whether you're a man or woman. Why do you act the way you do? And I'm an educator, so obviously it's all about, again, knowing about the past, knowing where we are in the current situation and in the future, and prevention. So I started the story then with real events that occurred during that era. And I weave actual heroines into the stories, and I rewrite it as descendants in Lydia's diaries, because Lydia of Thyatira was 2,000 years ago. And so her descendants have stories because they all have missions from God. And so I wove in actual stories, which when we talk about women and putting them on platforms, I found so many stories about women. I don't want to give away too much, that actually curtail certain sex crimes in their communities and countries. They've never been mentioned. We don't hear about them. And many of them partnered with men who knew that men needed to support taking care of their wives, their daughters, their children, in terms of not allowing the sexual abuse or the sex crime. So we move through those eras, and I weave it in without showing any graphics whatsoever, because I don't want to applaud that. We don't need to talk about it. We see too much of that on the news. And we go mostly on a hunt. So it's about, why is this happening? What is the root of the evil? And by the way, the root of the evil in the book is from Jezebel, who was the evilest queen during biblical times, and it's her descendant. So it's not even actually a man. Now, demons get into men and women's minds, and that's part of where the evil comes from. But we have this descendant war going on also between Lydia of Thyatira, who she loved God and Jesus, and she was truly the first feminist. And there's maybe 2 paragraphs about her in the Bible, which, that's typical, right? But I elaborated on a fact, and Lydia of Thyatira is now a current day saint because of who she was in biblical times. And I expand on who she is by God granting her a league of angels, and then Jezebel is granted a demon dynasty. So you have those wars going on, which, whether people believe or not, it's not a religious epic adventure. It's what laid the foundation for who these women are. They're not preachers. They're not high and mighty, out roaring about, you must believe. They're just normal women.
Yeah. And then I'm looking at your site right now with all the different heroines. So it must have been so, like, what's really cool is the people listening to it right now, because back in the 70s and the 60s, that character, maybe they're, like you said, the Vietnam War, they're addressing different types of crimes done different ways. Then when you get into the 2000s, you're seeing a lot done through cyber, right? You're seeing a lot done through the computer trafficking. So it's changed through the years. And then you're going all the way into the future, into 2060. to other ways that this might be happening. So how from 1960s to 2060, I guess it's like creation and like fantasy, like how much does that change through the 100 years?
Well, first of all, with the heroines, they are relatable. I think every human being struggles with, do I have a purpose in my life? Is there a mission? Is there something purposeful for me that I need to fulfill? Or do I just do a job? And a lot of times your only choice is to put, food on the table. So it's a job. But the heroines are torn between their gift. They have a gift. Lou's gift is music, which is kind of neat in the first book because there's a lot of 60s and 70s popular songs and she sings. And that's really cool. But then you see her struggle with, okay, God, you've given me this mission, but I'm also a gifted singer. What's going on here? I just want to sing. Can I do my job for you by singing? And then you see how that weaves in together. And also, like I said, it's the war, it's the start of the cell phones, technology, and we're looking at this underlying current that's starting, that people are starting to grasp. And headlines, the news is much more graphic with the war. At first they curtailed it, but then it became more and more graphic. So you look at kind of the evolution, and also MTV started different, I guess, influences is what I'm trying to say, which maybe moved us from what used to be a very moral society, especially in the US, where there was a little bit of modesty. Another turning point and milestone was God was taken out of schools during the 60s. So we're looking at, okay, could any of that have influenced how women and children are being abused, sexual abuse? So then we move on. So and Lou, because of sex trafficking, can't really be discovered as much. The criminals still have the edge. And also because of the war, her crime that she has to fight is sex trafficking on an international level. She comes across an international underground organization, which they were existing in the 60s. Okay. So then we go to the 90s, and it's Lou's daughter. What happened in 1990? Okay, we get the World Wide Web. Let's go, right? We get the first pornographic sites. We get the first videos. The criminals are loving this. They see a whole new world of marketing women and recruiting innocent women. But guess what? Our communities, our homes, our churches, our parents, we have no idea. We're totally clueless. It's just, hey, the web is cool. Our schools weren't even looking at possibilities of predators. Okay. So it ends up Lydia, who's the second one in the 90s, second heroine. Her fight is against pornography and sex trafficking on the World Wide Web. So we look at how she finds out about it, how she advocates to fight it. And it's pretty interesting what she goes through. And it's all very real. It's all very real. Angels can't always be there to protect you either. That's one thing. We can pray for angels and try to thwart demonic influences. But I think what I tried to answer in there too is why bad things happen to good people, because angels can't be everywhere at once. So then we've gone from the 90s to the 2020s. Oh, and I forgot to mention, so Lydia, her fabulous gift is fashion design. So we have this cool world of her being a fashion designer and breaking out, and becoming famous overnight. Well, interesting enough, where are the traffickers finding these women? They're women and young girls who aren't making it in the industry, who are being rejected, which is today. That's today all over. And the World Wide Web is out there. So boom, that's what unveils. So then we go to 2020, and Jess, she's the rebel heroine. And she basically says, look, I know I've inherited this mission, although I'm a piano prodigy. She came out typing. She came out playing the piano. They said they joke about that. But the angels also said Jess knew her calling in the womb. And all she wants to do is fight the evil descendants of Jezebel and find out what her mission is. So do we stray away from our gifts? or maybe the gift could help her. Might be the gateway to her calling. So we have that going on. We have her becoming rebellious, getting ahead of the angels. And I can go ahead and say it because I think it's on the website. She takes on an alternate ego and becomes the purple shadow. So she's more kind of a superhero type genre, but she's a normal girl that masters martial arts. And I think one point I want to make too, when we talk about the heroines, is back in the 60s, especially, maybe I'm being a little bit prejudiced, but girls that grew up in the country and they shot the guns with their grandparents and went hunting and they rode the RVs and the motorcycles, they were tough. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's tough women and we can be tough. And I've been an advocate for teaching self-defense since day one for women. So that's something that our women know. Okay, I'm a target, so I'm going to be tough. So they learn how to be tough, not overly aggressive, but hey, there's nothing wrong but being physically astute so I can take care of myself and others. So Jess really masters that. And it comes to find out, and you know that with looking at the website, her mission is to stomp out child predators. So again, we don't go into the graphics. There's nothing, unpleasant, that we get enough of that in the news. And how does she go about that? And we're talking about eradicating. So we're talking about something really serious here that our justice system is lagging horrifically behind in. And remember, we do have angels that hopefully will come through to do something really dramatic to make a point. So then we get up to 2040 and Eve the burden is all on her because the descendants know the secret of how, when, and why. And we know a little bit about that. We know that God will decide whether or not we've been successful in the world valuing women and children to the point that they no longer sexually abuse them. So that decision will be made in 2060. And what's happened in 2060, in 2040 is when she's 20 years old, Eve is her name. She has to make sure that what has been eradicated stays eradicated. And at the same time, look at what has become beyond any of our imagination. And that's what is occurring on the deep, dark web. Mm-hmm. Okay? And if we aren't preventing and educating our children and adults, our governments and everyone now, perhaps that's where we're heading. And I don't want it to sound like a doom and dark, because it's not. It's not that kind of story. There's romance. Some of the angels are funny. We'll talk about the angels you said in a minute. But so that's where we evolve to. And I wrote the stories with the full intention of them being on the screen. I know the impact of books for one, but the impact of being on television or the screens. If you look at the Queen's Gambit right now, which is all the and the chess sets, you can't keep them in stock. Imagine if we had a fantasy reality drama that had that kind of impact, that people started talking about, not just talking and raising awareness. See, that's what is finally happening, or raising awareness. But we have to go beyond that. There's thousands of nonprofits fighting this. They're asking for money every day. Why is that happening? And that's where I want to get. I want to give the money back, but I want us to get into saying, stop the madness. There's a judicial system that has to change. Change on all the levels of everything we mentioned: sex trafficking, sexual abuse, pornography, child predators, and the deep dark web technology.
And I had read that it's like $150 billion industry yearly, and with half of that being, sexual abuse. There's organ harvesting and there's child abuse, trafficking. It's such a epidemic, and it seems like, the media catches wind of it, but they're not covering it. It's almost like they're complicit in it. So there needs to be some kind of re-education across the board, like starting as a younger child, listening and watching your books. Hopefully this will get into series. I think it would be an epic series because these colorful characters that you've created, some of them like your League of Angels, beautiful characters, and each of them doing some amazing things. It reminds me of the Avengers. And then your demons are so colorful, and to do it in such a way, like we can call on our angels at any time. They're always with us. We just have to ask for their help. But it's such a problem right now. And like you said, if we don't, 40 years, what is it, 2020, 40 years from now, if we don't address it now, yes, that dark web is going to take over because it's there. And that's why so many children, so many people are more victimized now because they have more access to us. And with kids being in front of their tablet and their computer all the time, they are targeted even when their parents might be in the same household and they're in another room. Their kids are still being targeted unless there's parental controls on it, unless, these children need to be educated from the beginning. And I love how you are putting real heroines or real stories of people that have helped with trafficking and with stopping this kind of abuse throughout the history that we have never seen or really recognized before, and putting highlight onto this history and, giving credit where it was due with these people is, just I think it's a really great education process. Some of the proceeds from the books you're giving to community groups, churches, so they receive proceeds from the sale of it, and you can help combat and fight these within our communities. So what are some other things that people can do to help?
Well, if they want to raise money for their nonprofit, their church, just to find a domestic, shelter where there's domestic violence, they can contact me, and the purchase of the books will work up a proceed plan where they could put it on their site or whatever they do. They get the money back. And that's just so important to me. That was an underlying reason for doing what I do. And again, because I look at the Avengers and the billions that it made, and I think, oh my gosh, if these nonprofits had that money, and that would be the end result, to give back. So beginning with the books, and then like what happened with the Queen's Gambit, the book was not a number one seller, but it is now. And unfortunately, that author didn't live to reap those benefits, but he had some other great things that had occurred. But there's just a whole great domino effect to where we're raising the awareness, people are talking about it, and they're getting money back to cure this evil, to educate parents, to do whatever they need to do to educate people in their church or community, their governments, so that they have the funds and can keep going with, we're fighting this. We're going to fight this. It's not going to be put on a back burner. We're going to keep going. So I think also I have a free Zoom class that I'm starting, a book club on Zoom in January. And I'd love to have, listen to me, overzealous, but thousands of people on there, they buy the book and we talk about it. They write reviews, and because to get the producers to really look at this, it's easy for them. I understand you're asking them to invest a lot of money if there's a success story behind it. I don't believe it has to be, but of course I'm optimistic enough to say, hey, you just need to do this because it's going to change the world. We want a deep cultural change, not just awareness lifting, but just judicial system eventually change because of this worldwide. So people engaging with me, all I have to do is contact me on my website through the contact or email, and they can participate in free Zoom, buy the books, and then just set up groups, whether you engage with my books or not. Just ask when you go to the school board meetings, especially now, and you may not be physically attending, but I know there's communication going on. Ask these questions. Are my children safe? They're all on the computer now. What do I need to do when they're on the computer at home, getting their education? Have I blocked everything appropriately? Talk to the counselors. What do I need to talk to them about? What about their Facebook? Is it private, or is anybody able to get into their Facebook who's not who they say they are? Just all the simple questions that we might take for granted, that we think, are kids smart? They understand, they know, But the point is, they are smarter. They're more tech savvy than their parents. So that's where a lot of the issues are coming. And that's where I like to acknowledge Thorn, THORN.org, because that's what they do. They're on the cutting edge of fighting the technology culprits that are invading, our children's space and creating the sex crimes through the internet. So a lot, but we can do it.
And that's Ashton Kutcher's program, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, and I had read somewhere like 2,000 instances were stopped. There were a lot of it. I've been on their site and I've looked at.
They're doing great work.
Yeah.
And to me, of course, you'll be an educator and you're out in the community and you're analyzing what's going on, what can we do better, where are the resources, why are certain people lacking in that. Maybe we count too much on the government, but then maybe we should, because to me, the Department of Education is the key. It is the key. So President-elect Biden, if you're hearing this, senators, if you're hearing this, the Department of Education has got to get engaged in educating about technology and prevention immediately from day one. Kindergarten. The kids are on the computer in kindergarten. So, earlier than that now with iPhones. So that's a key. That's an absolute key.
And I know the Trump administration with his wife and his daughter, they've done a lot for human trafficking this past administration. Like really, were committed to ending a lot of it. So
there were milestones, major
milestones. And that whole wall that was built was helped deter a lot of the trafficking that was happening, because a lot of them were coming over through the cartels, and these fake families would bring them over, and the coyotes and all that. So I hope, whatever happens with this election, whether Trump stays in office or Biden takes over, I really hope that this doesn't go away and this keeps getting addressed, because all the work that he's done.
That saddened me, because I think it was Ivanka Trump that was really driving that. And there were, people say, oh, fake news and propaganda. No, I followed it and looked and talked with a lot of nonprofits, and there were some major milestones in terms of justice and prevention. And we're looking at prevention, protection, and prosecution, not just awareness, and that's where our focus has to stay. And to me, it's a number one priority. To me, it's a number one priority in the world. For example, and I look at this in my stories, do we continue to do business? Does the U.S. continue to do business with these countries that are trafficking, whether it's sex trafficking, labor trafficking, organ trafficking? Do we, what, no. Let's stop the madness. So yes, I just adopted this mission, took a leap of faith, like I said, and starving artist or whatever. this is going to happen. I was meant to do this. And it will.
Yeah, it will. And United States is one of the biggest culprits. Most of the money comes from the United States. They're a big contributor to the human trafficking. So we think we live in this beautiful, it couldn't happen in our town. No, not in my little small town. It happens in every town, in every state in this United States. And we're one of the biggest culprits. And
a child or a person, woman, man, whomever is missing, chances are 99% of the time, that is why they are missing. I mean, they're just trolling, not just the internet, but they're trolling our streets. So,
yeah. And since I became much more aware of this, I see some child that's missing or and I just shudder, because I know what's happening most of the times with these children that just disappear and you never see from them again. You never hear from them again. And I know ICE and some of these other organizations, there's so much money involved and the dirt goes so deep, and we just need to flush it to the surface and erase it. And there's so many amazing men and women like yourself that are advocating for change, for reform, and to eliminate this from the face of the earth.
They're working so hard, and the trauma that goes with it, because I know when I early on and worked with sexually abused children, I didn't even realize how much I was affected. And part of me feels like you have your nerve, you weren't sexually abused, but that is very real to me because I know how I was haunted by it and traumatized by it because of what I was witnessing had happened, and documenting and giving therapy too. And that's a whole nother avenue of that when we do find these persons who have I hate the word victimized, but that's the truth because they rise from victimization to victory. I know they do, but we have to be able to assist them and take it very
Mm-hmm.
seriously. I mean, it hasn't even been taken seriously in terms of the women and boys and men and children who've been put into situations where they're sex trafficked and they're blamed.
Mm-hmm.
The blame is put on them. So we're doing better with educating our law enforcement and our governments and all that too.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that does sound so incredibly dark, and that's why I put the angels in there.
Mm-hmm.
And see, it's all about hope. It's all
Mm-hmm.
about hope and perseverance and strong women that aren't superhero women. They're normal women that we all have the capacity to do what they're doing. It's just once you adopt your mission, just know that if you take it seriously and embrace it, you can do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and good will shine through the darkness. So the light of these angels attacking these demons and these heroines I think it's a great way to get this message across and raise awareness. So what is next for you? What is next on your agenda? You had mentioned maybe a podcast, or I know you're trying to shop this around and get somebody to pick it up either as a series or as a movie. I can totally see myself cracking out to this as a series or movies, like these
Oh,
beautiful, vibrant characters. I can already think of some actresses who can play
I
some
know.
heroines. How fun is that?
We just need a great singer for Lou to
Yeah.
kick things off. And again, how fun would that be? And their interaction with the angels, it develops over time, but it's just a really neat thing to see. And to me, if you didn't believe in angels and demons, which I think 88% of the population do, no matter what religion they are,
Hmm.
you would believe at the end of seeing this on the screen, if not reading the book. So, where do I go from here? Okay. So, I've been pitching to some degree, and it's been so interesting with the comments, and people are intrigued and they realize that it's an epic adventure, and there will be, because of the supernatural angels, which it's not angels and demons flying around and fighting all the time by any means. There's a lot of dialogue, but costly. But I don't believe it would be that costly. I've done the research. I'm not just saying that. But Little Studios out of LA has agreed to work with me to pitch this, and so I'm working hard to be able to raise the funds to be able to create the proper package that would go to producers who would say, oh my gosh, this is entertainment. Because
Hmm.
number one, I understand they have to look at how much money will I raise? I have to put million into it, million or more, of course, to do it. So will it be profitable?
Hmm.
I want it to be profitable because I want to give back and I want to raise the awareness to create the change. So we're pitching. We're in the process of creating materials. That's why if people can buy the books, gifts, give as gifts, whatever you can do. Kindle's only the Kindle version's only $2.99 right now. So hopefully that's helpful. So we're pitching, like I said, and hoping to get what I envision is the TV series, because it would be one heroine that would be represented for 2 years, and some of the series go maybe three,
Hmm.
and then in another 2 years another. So you have
Hmm.
8 good years of material already, and the angels and demons would stay the same. And then at the end of every episode, I was so impressed. Hawaii Five-O, not too long ago, they did a rescue of girls that had been trafficked in the show. And at the end of the show, they gave a shout out to this wonderful mission in Hawaii that was doing this work.
Hmm.
I'm like, wow, why isn't everybody doing that? And I envision at the end of every episode, we would have a thorn dart or Stop Trafficking, just these wonderful, infomercials at the end so that people immediately get online and look that up and contribute or become educated. So that's where I hope to go. And I'm trying to finish the series. I have it written in terms of drafts, all the way through. I know the ending. So I know their love connections and where they are in place and time and a lot of the research. So it's exciting and it's fun. You have to love it to leave everything behind in terms of it. I've worked since I was 14 and not have a paycheck coming in. It's interesting, but I'm a fortunate person that my husband has an income. So we just said, do it. When are you going to do it? Do it now. So that's what I'm hoping and praying for. So
it's nice to have the support of your husband to let you do your creative endeavors. And I can see this being huge. I mean, if I owned a studio, man, I'd be picking up this, like, nobody else is getting this thing. This is mine. Like, this is like right up my alley. I always love, a lot of reality with a lot of fantasy woven in together with a little suspense and grit and like the heroines winning at the end, a lot of suspense and all that. So I think it's an amazing concept. I hope you get as big as like the Harry Potter woman that wrote all those books, because she was just like a teacher and all of a sudden, boom, there's her series. And it's great because it starts with like the adolescents, like 13-year-olds can read this, but an adult can still be drawn in to reading it as well. So I think I can't wait to see everything that transpires with these books and as it gets into a series. And then I'm going to see you on like talk shows and all. I'm like, I remember when.
I thank you for being a part of it, because I haven't done anything really to promote other than probably the last months, and because I was writing and I just wanted to finish it. And so now I'm into promoting, but it takes a lot of time. And I've become a little bit more of a recluse since the, bad word, pandemic.
Yeah.
But, I want to put other people out front. It's like you said, I envision certain actors and actresses and people that would just go out there and sell the heck out of this thing, not just for themselves, because they believe in it. And I know they're going to be a part of facilitating a change that's so needed. So, and to you for what you do, this is great. And hopefully other people will follow your lead and think perhaps I have something to say.
Well, that's one of the great things. Like, this pandemic hit. I mean, it's been awful in a lot of ways, but it's also been good in a lot of ways. Like, we've been forced to slow down, and you've really dove in and really have been like, really, it almost like it warp speeded everything that you were working on. And so, you were able to focus your attention on finishing the creation of this whole thing. I created a podcast through all this. So hopefully, I think we're all tired of this like lockdown stuff. So hopefully we'll be seeing the light at the end of the tunnel soon. But at the end of the tunnel, you're going to have a awesome series, and I can't wait to start watching it. I love it. That's my favorite thing to do. Like, it's so hard for me to watch one at a time. I like to watch like 8 in a row, and I'll just crack out to them. So
It's hard, especially in writing, the episode for Luz, to make it binge worthy, because that's my whole thing throughout my life has been television, movies, and books. Probably a book you couldn't name I hadn't read and had to do with mysteries and series, but it needs to be binge worthy. And although parents and children maybe don't sit down any longer to watch something together, again, call me optimistic. I could see them sitting down and watching this together. And I have to say, when I wrote this, elderly people, we so often leave them out. And they don't really want to see the Avengers, and they really don't want to see all the sex and the violence and the blow them up. They can watch this. It's delightful for them to watch in every way. And some of the people that have commented the most about the books have been in their 80s that have read it, and went so far as to ask me, are Lydia's diaries, are those real? Did you find Lydia's diaries where the descendants wrote stories about the heroine? And I said, well, that's a great point, because most of the heroines are real. Of course, they weren't descendants of Lydia, but are wrote it, but they are actual women and men who did some great things for the betterment of women and children. So reality to me, and if you believe in angels and demons in the celestial world and that influence, then there isn't a whole lot of fantasy in this. It's pretty real.
I love that. And I love it because we want to bring the families together and that the whole family can watch. It's not something that like kids have to be set on the living room and the parents are in another room and then like the older parents, like my parents would always be I
Mhm.
remember when the Love Boat was on and Three's Company. They wouldn't let me watch it because they had potty mouth and there were sexual situations. So we would sneak and watch those. Like they'd be like, no, nope, you're not allowed, but we'd watch it anyway. But now it's something that the whole family can sit down with, a tub of popcorn and watch. And there's real discussions afterwards, you know?
Could I have a guardian angel? Is maybe
Mhm.
a guardian angels out there? And what I do love about it, though, I worked really hard, but it just came to me in terms of making them real. And they're so individually unique, the angels and the demons, just like the heroines are. They're so individually unique. They're just really cool. And everybody loves Marvel and the Avengers and that universe. Well, maybe this is set in God's universe in some people's eyes, but it's just neat to see these angels celestially, but then they transform into humans, and you may know or not know who they are. And then the demons are gross, they're disgusting celestially, but they transform into beautiful humans. Thus the deceits and the chameleons as they're walking amongst us. So, and is that real? A lot of people believe that's
Mhm.
very true. So,
Mhm. Well, if you believe that there's the veil is being lifted. So, and I've heard somebody tell me before, she's a psychic, she was a psychic medium, and actually she wrote an amazing book called The Light Between Us. Laura Lynn Jackson, The Light Between Us. And she said, hold up a piece of paper and then hold up a piece of paper and look on the other side. She's like, that's how close they are. They're
mm,
like right there, and you just have to call upon them. So I think it's such a well timed novel and book and series that it's going to become because, like I said, a lot of these subjects or a lot of these problems are really coming to the surface to be eradicated and eliminated, and something to bring the family together, because they can watch and discuss it together.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So how can people get a hold of you? I know you mentioned some of your book clubs, or what is the best way for them to reach you?
I think the easiest way is my website because there's a contact button on there, and it's sgsavage.com. And that there's a button also to go to Amazon to purchase the books. Barnes and Noble has the books. You can you might not walk into your local bookstore right now, but you can request the two books. My goal is to get book 3 out by the end of December, and I've written her Lydia's story so that it can stand alone. So if you're not into series, you could just start with Lydia's story in the 90s. But sgsavage.com is the very best way. And then I don't mind being emailed at all either if you want to disclose that. Of course, they email me from my site.
Great. And I will also put those in the show notes. And it's been so wonderful having you on. And before we go, I always ask my guests this one thing. What does it mean to you to live from an awakened heart?
Oh, wow. That's why I love the title of what you're doing. This is really the truth. I have known since the 8th grade that I was to write.
Mm.
I wanted to be a journalist, investigative journalist. I knew that. I knew it. And I went down a different path, but it was social advocacy, and I was writing speeches and advocating in community development, and everything that I did led me to what I believe to be able to write an epic adventure that can facilitate change.
Mm.
So it's easier said than done. Once I had the revelation, I knew that I just had to leave my career behind and dedicate all my time to these stories. I can't even express. I was happy before. And like I said, I miss having a paycheck. but it's exhilarating.
Mm-hmm.
I am living the dream of the 8th grader who wanted to do this. I wasn't equipped to do it then, though, but I also could have rejected that revelation. And because it was easy, get the paycheck, have a good job, keep going on. And I'm so glad I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
If you can chip away at what your heart is telling you to do, I just recommend everybody just try. You don't have to walk away from your moneymaker because we have to survive, but find out what that is and oh my gosh, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Because you listen to your intuition and your inner nudging, and that is what your heart has called you to do, is to create this epic work of novels with these heroines and this whole series. And you followed that. And it's just like following our inner nudgings because it's given to you for a reason. Like we're given these gifts, we're given these insights. And a lot of us are too afraid to follow it because, like you said, you have to make a job or make a living, but you can still listen to that heart, what it's telling you, and still, you can do it on the side. You can do it until you're able to do it full time because we're given those messages on our heart for a reason, and the world needs to hear what we have to say or what we have to offer.
Yes, I mean, we're here one time, we don't get any do-overs.
Mm-hmm.
So work it in there,
Mm-hmm.
and also another thing that I did is talk about what's on your heart. It was my heart. Been married for a long time and have 3 wonderful children, but I kept it to myself until I finally made the decision to leave my career behind because the outside forces and negativities and the fears of others can really interfere with what your inner being is telling you to do. So you don't even have to put it out there for everybody and, I need your opinion or what do you think? Just go with it internally at first even, and that can make all the difference too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, wonderful. I can't wait. I'm going to order these books. I know I listened to some of them, your audio selections that were up on your website, but I'm going to go and order these books and I'm going to delve into it because there's been just so much craziness out there in the world that I need something to take my mind off of it and be inspired by these.
It's not like I said, I don't want people to think it's gloom and doom and dark and happening to this.
It's hope.
Not. It is. It's fun. It's fun. And like, I love the love stories. I love a love story. I love good endings. There's trials and tribulations, but people need to be happy. And I won't even watch sad movies anymore. It's like, tell me if the dog died, because if it did, I'm not going to watch it.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. If I see an animal, I'm like, I just watch the octopus. Yeah. I just watch the octopus teacher.
What's so cool is that we have Great White Pyrenees Angel, Blanca, and then we have the demon dog, which happens to be a Rottweiler, and I know they're lovely animals, so I hope nobody's offended by that, but it's kind of cool to see the interaction that occurs there. I've had people that said, that's believable. The dog angel was really believable. Okay.
Well, great. I can't wait to dive in. Well, Sherry, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you have a wonderful day. I so appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you so much. Keep up the good work because this is wonderful what you're doing.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Awaken Heart podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, head on over to your favorite podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach me at theawakenheartpodcast.com.